Bitcoin is exciting because it shows how cheap it can be. Bitcoin is better than currency in that you don't have to be physically in the same place. And of course, for large transactions, currency can get pretty inconvenient.
Bitcoin and things like it is the equivalent of the red pill. Okay? We are entering a completely world of uncharted water right now.
Have you made any investments in Bitcoin?
So, I mean, I personally own Bitcoin in my hedge fund. I own Bitcoin in my fund. I own Bitcoin in my private account. It is a huge deal. It's a huge, huge, huge deal.
I want to ask you, which of the areas in technology right now are you most intrigued about from an investment perspective?
Okay, well, I think it's Bitcoin.
Bitcoin?
I think it's Bitcoin because I think Bitcoin really has the potential it and other virtual currencies have the potential to transform the world pretty much the way the internet did way back when.
Is Bitcoin the currency of the future, or is it the payment system they're developing?
Bingo, it's the payment system, it's the blockchain encryption, and they're interesting things. I think Bitcoin, or the really blockchain encryption that's behind it, has a greater ability to bring more of the world's population out of poverty than anything we've seen in...
Well, for one thing, it's a cheap payment system.
For one thing, it's a cheap payment system, but it's more important than that. It's more important than that. Blockchain cryptography is all about digital transfer of ownership in a completely transparent and public way.
People make Bitcoin more complicated than it is, and the three things that matter in Bitcoin are: one, that nobody controls it. No person, no group of people, no company, no country controls it. That's crucial, and it would not be interesting without that key feature. It's easy to say that, it's not very easy to design a system that really works that way, and Bitcoin has been designed that way. Second is that there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoins, and nobody can change that. If that wasn't the case, I wouldn't be interested, being Argentine. Number three is that if you own any Bitcoins, you can send them to anyone you want, anywhere in the world, without asking anyone's permission. Those three things make it by far the best form of currency we've ever seen.
There are a lot of other countries in the world that have a disastrous currency system or a disastrous internal financial or regulatory system. Bitcoin is going to be extremely attractive in those countries, right? And Bitcoin is going to be the outside response. It's going to be adopted precisely because it's not controlled by the government of, pick a country that has bad policies. And so it's an example of this where it'll basically, essentially it's coming in from outside.
Do you think this is a currency that's really going to work eventually?
Well, I think it is working, and there will be other currencies like it that may be even better. But in the meantime, there's a big industry around Bitcoin, and people have made fortunes out of Bitcoin. Some people have lost money out of Bitcoin.
The target value for Bitcoin is not some $50 or $100. It is $100,000 to $1 million. Bitcoin's value is at an all-time high again. Its market cap is now twice what it was at the 2011 peak. It is nowhere near its potential, Rick Falkring says, which is 4 orders of magnitude above today's value.
Is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the true inflation rate, Paul Krugman. Bitcoin is the true inflation rate, Ben Bernanke. And once again, I got to tell you, it feels great to be a Bitcoin millionaire. It's gone up almost 1,400% in the last year. And I'm loving it because there's anonymity, there's power. You're taking a stance against the paper pushers like Jamie Dimon over at JP Morgan. And this is really, this is the currency of the resistance.
And then you'll see Bitcoin trading at 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. Rick Falkvinia does an excellent analysis. He predicts that Bitcoin will capture between 1 and 10% of the global Forex market, which implies a price of between $100,000 to $1 million per Bitcoin.
Convince me here and now, guys, because I'm still that loser who has nickels and pennies and quarters in my wallet, that one day I'm only going to be using Bitcoin.
I think you'll be using digital currency. I think Bitcoin will disrupt gold. I think the U.S. dollar will still be controlled by the U.S. government, but it will go onto its own blockchain controlled by the government. I think really what will happen is you use a combination of Bitcoin, Ether, your devices, the Internet of Things. We've got billions of devices coming online. They'll never exchange value with PayPal, credit cards, or ACH, but they will use cryptographic tokens. So your suite of options will increase. I think fiat currencies will become digital, so credit cards, plastic, cash will be gone, but Bitcoin will be one piece of that larger puzzle, and cryptocurrency is here to stay. It's a space that we believe is the future, and Gemini is the picks and shovels company of that future.
It's a great instrument for crime, because a lot of it has nothing to do with central control, with the central banks, with supervision, with regulatory environment, and it's a very nice way, and people who look into how terrorism is financed will tell you a lot more than I would, but I've heard them. But it's certainly a potential instrument for illicit transactions, for money laundering, for terrorist financing.
If in fact you can't crack that at all, government can't get in, then everybody's walking around with a Swiss bank account in their pocket.
It's not a currency. I mean, it does not meet the test of a currency. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not around in 10 or 20 years.
Why does it not meet the definition of a currency?
Well, because people say, well, I'll sell you goods in Bitcoins, but they change the price of those every time the price of the dollar changes in relation to Bitcoin. They're pricing off the dollar. They could say, well, I'll sell it to you in barrels of oil, but if every time the price of oil changes, they change the number of barrels you have to have. That's not, your oil is not the currency.
So let's make a bold call here. In 10 years, what do you think Bitcoin will be worth? One Bitcoin.
Between $500,000 and $1 million.
Now the problem is, so the dollar is going to keep dropping. So one of the reasons I can predict what's going to happen is I can predict the dollar will keep dropping simply because the U.S. government and now the euro, the European central banks, are printing so much of this trash. So you'll see gold going up in price, oil going up in price, real estate going up in price, because this is trash.